Greetings, friends around the world. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy channel. Today I'd like to talk about Ebola pestilences in 2016. You've heard a lot about Ebola. How dangerous is it? Is there a possibility that biological warfare or pestilences are going to destroy the planet or all the human beings on it in 2016? How serious is Ebola? What have people said about it? Why are people concerned about it? Should you be concerned about it? And what's going to happen? We're going to go through some news events, reports, and the Bible to answer those questions. Now, the Ebola was first discovered in 1976 in Africa, but in 2014 we've seen a resurgence of it. We've seen thousands who've died from it. I'd like to read a report related to the World Health Organization about this. The World Health Organization warns that available figures vastly understate the true scale of the epidemic. Ebola is spreading, has caused several deaths in various other countries in Africa, such as Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Congo, Liberia, Sierra Leone. A spokesperson for the World Health Organization warned that the epidemic is showing no sign of slowing. It's killing an estimated 71% of the people who are infected as the search for a cure continues. Now, I'll give you a quote from here. These figures, which are far greater than those from all previous Ebola outbreaks combined, are known by World Health Organization to vastly underestimate the true scale of the epidemic. The Ebola epidemic, raging parts of West Africa, is the most severe acute public emergency seen in modern times. Basically, going back for a long time, it's not seen anything like this. Never before in recorded history has a biosafety level 4 pathogen affected so many people so quickly over such a broad geographical area for so long. And that's from the World Health Organization. The United Nations declared that the West Africa outbreak is a threat to international security, and they're trying to mobilize global assistance. The United States is involved. It's estimated the United States may spend $1 billion or more to fight Ebola. The U.S. sending 3,000 soldiers into parts of Africa to try to set up treatment facilities. But I'd like to make a few comments about the United Nations, tying it in here. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, made a few comments. He said, "Every day we delay, the cost and suffering will grow exponentially. We can not allow bans on travel or transport to slow us down. We need isolation of people affected by Ebola, not nations struggling to cope with it." A couple days after he said that, Secretary General Moon made an odd statement. He stood before the 69th annual debate of the United Nations Assembly, and he said a lot of things that just have gone wrong. He said, "This year, the horizon of hope is darkened. Our hearts are made heavy by unspeakable acts and deaths of innocents," he told the assembled leaders of 193 nations. Not since the end of World War II has there been so many refugees, displaced people, and asylum seekers. Never before has the United Nations been asked to reach so many people with emergency food assistance and other life-saving supplies, he said. "It may seem as if the world is falling apart as crises pile up and disease spreads." Now he then puts his own solution, but leadership is precisely about finding the seeds of hope and nurturing them into something bigger. That's our duty. That's my call to you today. In his speech, he then highlighted the crucial importance of dealing with climate change, the unprecedented crisis of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. And he says we face more man-made calamities than natural ones. We may not control Mother Nature, but who else but us is responsible for securing peace and justice in our day? War, poverty, ignorance, crises caused by people can be stopped by people. I do not think we are yet comfortable about the world our generation is leaving to our children. Still, I can have hope. He's worried about war. He was worried about people being hungry. He's worried about pestilences like Ebola. He's worried about rumors of war. Well, Jesus talked about such things. If you take your Bibles, I'm going to go to the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and read a few things that Jesus said about such things. Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am Christ,' and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Now, we've seen some of these. But is Ebola the final part of pestilences, or perhaps just a precursor to them? And how dangerous is Ebola? I'd like to read something else in the World Health Organization. "Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this health crisis we face is unparalleled in modern times," said Dr. Bruce Aylward, A-Y-L, I don't know how to say that, told the reporters. He's the Assistant Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Bruce Aylward. "The gravity of the situation is difficult to get across within a few minutes," he said. He said the number of infected and dead had doubled in the past fortnight. You start to get a sense of rapid escalation that we're seeing this virus as it moves from what was a linear increase to what is almost an exponential increase in cases. The United Nations estimates 20,000 people could be infected by the end of 2014. So there are risks from Ebola. Now, is this a sign that the fourth horseman, the apocalypse, is about to accelerate its ride, or is it a precursor of things to come? Well, I'm going to get to that, but I'd like to read something. Now, this is a questionable and probably even false report, but many have circulated this on the internet about something supposedly happened in 1847 from Professor Lloyd Cunningdale. Now, I've tried to research this, and I can't find any proof that this is at all legitimate, but some are saying this is possible, what may happen in 2016. Quote, "An article in Weekly World News describes a find by a Professor Lloyd Cunningdale, Salt Lake City, who was excavating with his students at the site of a famous Donner Party disaster in 1847. The latter were a group of settlers bound for California who became trapped in the snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And many of you have heard about the stories of the Donner Party. There are rumors that they ended up eating their dead, etc. Some have denied that. Anyway, Cunningdale and students have found a time capsule left by the settlers which contained many predictions for the future. Now, I'm not aware that people were doing time capsules back then, especially over there, but this is what the report says. They predict that nations will abandon traditional methods of conflict and resort to the use of biological warfare. In 2016, one such disease will spread out of control and kill all the humans on the planet." Now, since the source, which is the Weekly World News, often reported fiction, why bother to report this? Because some do feel that the United Nations and others have an agenda to kill off much of the planet. Some believe it'll be by accident. Some believe governments are doing this on purpose. And some feel that we're going to have massive pestilences in 2016. And we may have serious pestilences in 2016. But all humans will not be killed in 2016, despite what this particular claimed report says. Now, as far as Ebola goes, it should serve as a warning, a precursor of pestilences that are going to come. Now, one of the ways that Ebola is spread, by the way, is from fruit bats. It turns out fruit bats are eaten in parts of West Africa. They're smoked, they're grilled, and they're made into some kind of a spicy kind of a soup. Now, if this practice and certain other practices were stopped, this would reduce the spread of the disease. Now, it's not just fruit bats. The resistant Ebola virus, called REBOV, can be transmitted to pigs. Now, this was found in the United States and Virginia in 1989. Now, the initial outbreak ended up they also had an outbreak in pigs that affected non-human primates in Pennsylvania, Texas, and Italy. But these were all contained. So back in 89 or so, there was a problem. Back in 76, there were problems. There were other problems in Africa, but none of these really got out of control. However, if people did not eat biblically unclean meats, my suspicion is some of the pestilences that the Bible warns about would not have to come. But again, I consider that Ebola is a precursor to the coming pestilences as opposed to the final ones. Why? Because in what Jesus said, as well as in the book of Revelation, there was kind of an order. And in the beginning of sorrows, there was an order, and in the seals open in Revelation, there was an order. In both lists, famines precede pestilences. Now, if you'd like to, we can go to Revelation chapter 6. I'm going to read a couple of verses here. Revelation 6, starting in verse 5. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hands. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." Now, the famine that this is talking about has not happened yet, not to the degree that the Bible is referring to. Why do I mention this? Because this has to happen before the next fulfillment happens. And this, starting in verse 7, Revelation 6. And he opened the fourth seal, and I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, by the beasts of the earth. So that hasn't happened yet. But notice that's supposed to kill a fourth of the earth. Therefore, all the earth will not be killed in 2016. And again, before the final pestilences start to come, we're going to have to see some other type of famine. Now, famine could come quickly. We could see, for example, a collapse of genetically modified crops in places such as the United States. We could see weather problems. We're actually seeing weather problems in different parts of the world, including places like Ukraine and where I'm sitting here in California that have water shortages, and there's other parts of the world as well. Now, many believe, correctly in my view, that infectious diseases and possibly bugs are part of the beasts of the earth that are prophesied to kill a significant portion of humankind in Revelation 6, verses 7 through 8. Especially in light of what you read that Jesus said in Matthew 24, verses 7 through 8. Ebola is one of many threats of pestilence. It's one that's been already killing thousands. The United Nations and others are trying to figure out what to do about it because they haven't seen anything quite like this. But something worse is going to happen. As Jesus said, the end is not yet. Since we haven't seen the time of massive famines that Jesus discussed, are consistent with what was written in Revelation 6, verses 5 through 6, I do not believe that currently Ebola represents the final pestilences that have been warned against. Now, that doesn't mean that Ebola or some strain of it could not become part of the final pestilences later. I also believe that Ebola is a precursor of those pestilences, but there's no possible way that the end is going to come in 2016. Why? Because not what the United Nations says, not because what the United States wants to do, but because of what this book says. With this book, we do have the sure word of prophecy, and we can rely on what it says. So while there will be pestilences that are going to come, the end will not come in 2016. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy Channel.